Hello everybody, welcome to Monday Market Must-Knows. My name is Merlin Rothfeld, and here are 3 things to pay attention to for the upcoming trading week. Now, last week we talked about Ethereum and how the futures market on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange was brand new, just opening up on Sunday night for Ethereum. And I thought that might have a pretty negative impact on the futures. Well, it didn't. Ethereum pretty much just went sideways with very low volume on that futures market. Now, for our first point, we're going to talk about yet another cryptocurrency. I know you're like 2 weeks in a row. Well, this one is very significant. Why? Because it's become a major talking point, not just amongst the retail traders, but now institutional traders, corporations, and lo and behold, last week we saw central banks, and banks in particular, speaking about Bitcoin, adding it to their balance sheets. Now, why is this so important? It's important because it's an extremely volatile asset class, which if you're on the wrong side of any of these cryptocurrencies, it can blow your account very, very quickly. But I want to show the impact, not just for the crypto space, but what it means for the equity markets, because changes are afoot with regards to stock prices. Let's take a look at MicroStrategy. This is one company that in particular has been buying Bitcoin, being very public about their actions and how they're adding it to their balance sheet. We'll start with a chart that goes all the way back into 2019, from October 2019 through August 2020. And I want you to notice the volatility here on MSTR. You see that big drop there? Well, it went from $165 down to $90. That was a decline of about $75 or 54%. And that seems like a huge swing in price, right? 54%, that's massive and could probably blow your account. Well, all of a sudden in August of 2020, they made an announcement that they're going to start buying Bitcoin. Instead of holding cash on their balance sheets, which many corporations do, MicroStrategy said, we're going to hold Bitcoin. Now let's take a look at the chart and see what happened since then. This chart goes back to May of 2020 all the way through last week of February 2021. And you can see this huge run-up. I'm going to start this green line here in August when they made the announcement that they're buying Bitcoin. Now, all told, MicroStrategy has purchased about $1.3 billion worth of Bitcoin at an average price of about $16,000. You'll notice that the current price is much, much higher than that for Bitcoin, right around $48,000. That means they've tripled their profits, now sitting on over $3 billion worth of gains in Bitcoin. Now, why is this so important? Because has MicroStrategy really changed their business? Are they booming? Are they doing all kinds of corporate technology adjustments? No, they're not. They've basically added Bitcoin to their balance sheets and are being rewarded for it. Look at the price chart here. It went from $123 up to $1,315 at its peak. That's a pretty substantial gain of $1,192 or over 1,000%. The reason that this is important is because major corporations are now starting to make a fundamental shift on how they store their cash. Now with MicroStrategy, they were saying, look, we don't really want to hold cash because it's being devalued every day by Fed and central banks. Let's put it in maybe some digital assets which will appreciate over time or may appreciate over time. This is a change to the way things have been done in the past. And it's not just MicroStrategy. Jack Dorsey of Twitter has also been buying some for Twitter. We saw Elon Musk last week say, we're putting in $1.5 billion of our $19 billion in cash into Bitcoin. Now, I feel that this is pretty important because $19 billion for Tesla, it really isn't that much money in the grand scheme of things. But if you look at Google, Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, collectively, they've got over $500 billion in cash. And if some of that cash finds its way into the crypto space, certainly that would be a pretty positive thing for Bitcoin and its price. But what it also does is it opens you up to exposure to risk, because the balance sheets of these companies will now be holding one of the most volatile assets on earth. And over the next few weeks, I do believe you'll see a lot more companies making that transition, which could add new volatility to the equity markets. All right, long-winded part one. Let's go to number 2, which is talking about some economic data. We're going to talk about retail sales. Now, of course, we've mentioned this over the past few weeks on how retail sales is so critical to our markets, to our economy, to growth of America. Well, that number has been declining pretty rapidly. As we look at the price chart here, you can see that it's had these huge fluctuations due to COVID, but recently, over the past 6-8 months, it's been slowly drifting back down, and now it's actually in negative territory, showing a contraction in retail sales. And you may be thinking, oh, that's horrible. Well, if you look off to the left-hand side of the chart, you can see that there were many periods of time where it was actually below that zero line, meaning negative retail sales or contracting retail sales. So right now, we're at a point where we look at it and say, is this just a reversion back to the normal that we saw over the past few years? Or is this now going to be an extended decline that might drift down even further, again, breaking that longer-term trend and going down to maybe negative 2, 3, 4%? We'll have to wait and see, but certainly retail sales is going to be a pretty important number this week. That is going to happen on Wednesday at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time. All right, final one, back to earnings calendar. There are a few pretty important names, and I hope I won't mess up on any of these ticker symbols for you. There are about 513 companies reporting this week. Monday is a big goose egg. There are some companies, but none of them are major market movers. Tuesday brings you CVS, Medtronic, Occidental Petroleum, American Auto Parts, and American Water. Yes, we got a water company being publicly traded. Next will be air companies for sure. Wednesday brings you Shopify, which has been just absolutely crazy volatile. Baidu, Mosaic, Marathon Oil, Energy Transfer Partners, and Twilo reporting on Wednesday. Thursday, well, you've got Roku, you've got Walmart, Applied Materials, The Trade Desk, Trip, and Waste Management. And finally for Friday, a quiet one where we have just John Deere, the tractor, rounding out the Friday session for your earnings calendar. And that, my friends, is your Monday Market Must-Knows. We'll see you next week.